What's up, Dragon Brood? This is the video where we get to take ourselves to task. Because if you're watching this, that means yesterday probably we put up our overrated, underrated cards for Final Fantasy, just like we did for the last couple of sets. Only now we have a new tradition where we go back and say, were we full of crap or not, basically.
Yeah, we so often are. I will say, though, this time around, I think we did get some interesting hits in the underrated list. A couple of us, we both have at least a couple that I think you can make an argument for having hit at some point in the season. So we don't have to be as nervous as I usually am for this list.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
happy about that.
Hey, the last set we had a pretty good hit rate, so we'll see what happens. Also, hey, if y'all haven't done it yet, y'all should go check out those videos we made. If you haven't watched the one on this channel, you should do that after this, and then go over and visit our friend Dev over on his channel, because, if you put in SB MTG, you'll find another fun place to hang out and watch some Magic, so you should probably go do that.
5 letters is all it takes to enter into an exciting journey with me, of all people. But anyway,
yeah,
you ready to get down to it?
Yeah, I'll just go over the cards because we don't really have to care about order here. We'll just cover them
necessarily.
All. Yeah. So we'll just kind of start with I guess mine. Fang Keeper's Familiar. This is one that we said was underrated. It got a little bit of play. It hasn't become a staple of the format though, which was fine. We thought it might not be. But it hasn't got quite as much play as I wanted it to get, to be honest. Like, it's still fine. I think in the future we'll still see more play. And we started to see a little bit more at the end of this last season. It started popping up a little bit. But I don't know if that's just because the nature of the format's changing or if people were just discovering some new decks. So, I don't know. I still think it's a fine card. I don't think anybody over-invested in it, which is okay. It's just useful. So, if I had to score this on like a yay or nay or neutral, I think I'm still giving this like a hair above neutral, and that's about the best I'm giving on this pick.
I'd go around neutral too, just because I think more than, I've got the list in front of me too from last time, and I think more than any other card on either one of our lists, this is one that has the most potential to see play in the future. And you kind of pointed that out. I think that this is a good example of why, just a couple of months, especially on this new release schedule, just a couple of months isn't necessarily enough time for cards to catch on or get the list that they're looking for. And I think this could have some sort of soul tie, mid-range, or control home. Again, maybe after rotation or when we get new cards that work with it or something. This is just a strong Magic card that I think, given the right circumstances, could definitely see play. So, this one has time to grow.
Yeah, that's sort of where I'm at on it. Like, I don't think this is one that you're like, well, nobody's going to play this in the future. Like, no, it's a good card. It has all the right words to be a good card. It's costed appropriately. Like, This is one I'm okay with that it was on our list.
Yeah, same.
All right, our next one up, we have Dragonologist.
I
believe this was one of your picks.
Yeah. This has. Look, there's going to be a card on the on our overrated list from last time that I'm going to make effectively the same argument about. This one showed up towards the beginning of the season in these kind of like Jeskai Dragons list. But even though the Jeskai Dragons list have persisted and in some ways morphed into a kind of blue-white control list that's been popping up, Dragonologist has kind of been left by the wayside in those lists. So, and I get to take a little bit of credit, I guess, because like 2 Dragonologists would show up in the early parts of the season. But again, they've kind of fallen off. And unless we get better dragons, I'm not sure it actually will end up seeing play. Just a testament to how good a Magic card has to be at 3 mana to see play nowadays. Plus, we've got Stock Up, and Stock Up's just a better card than this.
So. I think that's the other issue, too, that maybe wasn't considered when we talked about it the first time, was just for what you're getting, it's like, well, you can just play Stock Up.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you get to look at cards, you get to take the best of them, kind of shape your hand. It's probably okay, and you don't really care about the dragon part, because as it turns out, the decks playing blue dragons were either, a lot of cases, either Teamer, which was playing just ramp cards, red dragons, whatever, didn't really care, and you have a dragon that also lets you draw cards as its omen with Meringue River Regent, right? Yeah. So there's that. Or they became, like you're saying, the kind of Jeskai control whatever, with just the one with Shizo or Shigo, whatever the big 4/5 dragon is.
Shiko, yeah, Paragon of the Way or something like that.
Yeah, so like that's kind of oftentimes the only dragon in there in a lot of those lists.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little bit tough on this. The good news is it wasn't really expensive when we talked about it last time.
Right.
It stayed mostly the same. I'm doing like a little search here, but I don't think the price even really moved.
Probably not.
On Dragonologist. So not really anything was lost there. I mean, we call it a miss, but realistically, it had a shot. Format just didn't even give it a shot.
I'm going to call neutral on this one just because it did have some play in the format, especially when that Jeskai Dragons deck was more dragon focused. They were even playing that 2-mana dragon counterspell for a while.
Yeah.
And when that was the case, this was a better card, but Stock Up eclipsed it like it does so many other 3-mana card draw options. And there's actually another 3-mana card draw option from this set. Those Dragons decks ended up playing more than this. And we'll get to that in a minute. I think that was a much better hit for me than this, but I'm calling neutral, and maybe that's just because
fair.
I'm,
totally fair.
I'm biased. but what was your next pick?
My next one was Magmatic Hellkite. And I'm still okay. Hell, I just lost to this card yesterday. People can watch the video. Or I guess by the time this goes up, it'll be like 2 or 3 days ago. So I'm like, I wanted to say something about it. I'm like, I just lost to it. So whatever. But the worst part about this card, though, is because of the way the format went. And if you bought this in paper, the price drop was huge on this one.
Yeah, I think this was like $10 at a point.
Like $8, I think. And you can get them for $1 now,
maybe.
Yeah. And that's the toughest part on this. Like, so from that standpoint, if you spend a bunch on them, that's a bit of a loss. But it is still a really good card in Standard. I've still cast it against like the Izzet aggro decks or whatever. You tap one of their lands down so they can't do anything for a turn. Because a lot of times they only have 2 or 3 land. So you slow them down from double spelling, you block their big flyer, and that's usually enough to turn the game around. So as a card, I think it's fine. But if you bought in paper, you got hurt on that one, and that's disappointing.
I think in general, we got to be careful with these 4 and 5 mana creatures. Not only because Corey Steel Cutter is such a fast deck, these Storm Chasers talent decks are very fast, but Esper Pixie also makes playing some of these 4 and 5 drop creatures untenable unless they do something really good when they ETB. Now this does. And I will say, you play it on the arena and you have a good time with it. It seems like it's a fun card. I have seen it on the arena infrequently. I rarely see this card, but I do sometimes. That said, when I do see it, it wrecks me. Like it takes out my Fountain Port or my Mirex or whatever. Like this card is okay. Well, it doesn't take it out, but it taps it down for a turn. This card seems to be effective when it's played against me, and it seems to be effective when I play it, but we're just not competitively, the S and A tier decks are very much equipped to just not care about this card. So that's been the big issue.
I guess correction. Looking back at the timeline, it was like $4 when we talked about it. It was down to $1. So like,
that's not so bad. I thought it was way more.
Yeah, I thought it was more than that. So like, that's not so bad, I guess.
But this is a card too that it wasn't just you. A lot of people played this in like the streamer event. And the day after the streamer event, there were a bunch of content creators that had played it. They were like, dude, crap, this card is amazing. It seemed like a lot of people had a great experience with this card. It just, the way Standard went, it didn't really translate.
Yeah, so. I think that's the other thing too. Some cards, even to some extent, like we're saying, the evolution of the Dragonologist, sort of. It's the format starts one way, then I guess now we're 11 weeks later or whatever. It just turns into a different thing. Yeah. And it's just like, oh, you can't really see the future in that regard. Hopefully you got a good 2 weeks with it. Right.
Yeah, right.
And then I can see a world in the future where I would still probably play Magmatic Hellkite. There's some stuff in Final Fantasy that works well with like the big red decks and stuff like that, where I would probably play this.
There absolutely is. There's a couple of really important big red cards in FF. So
yeah,
maybe.
Also, just saying, because the red crystal can copy things. Just saying, it's an idea.
It's gonna land every single turn. Yeah, that's cute. That's very cute.
It's an idea. I don't know how good that'd be, but I'm just saying, just throwing stuff out there. So
they'll give the channeler haste.
Yeah, it still has some uses, but yeah, just not as good as I think a lot of people thought it was going to be when it initially hit.
Now, my next card was really bad. What was it?
Yeah, this was a tough one. Veteran Ice Climber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a common. It costs like 10 cents or whatever. And it probably cost about that much when we reviewed it.
Yeah,
and I highly doubt that anybody took my commentary on this card and was like, dude, I'm going to buy into Veteran Ice Climber. Just like lost their shirt on it. But this is a neat card. I don't know that it'll ever actually do anything in Standard, but there were a few things I liked about it at the time, and there are still kind of a few things I like about it. But ultimately, this was destined to be a miss from the start. So I will take my miss sticker and put it on my forehead. This was not great.
Yeah, but that's one that it was a safe try because, common cards are obviously easy to get on Arena. If you went and bought it, you spent like a quarter on each card. So it's a miss, but it's not a miss that really hurt anybody. So I think that's a fine one.
And hey, those Hope S Time decks, it's a mill piece for those. It's not going to see any play. It's a well-designed Magic card, but it's not a good Magic card.
And again, I think it's a case where some cards, you're just going to be a victim of the metagame to even have a shot, right? It's just the way things are going to be.
Yeah, period. But what was your next pick?
This is the one I was the most hyped about. And sadly, it did about exactly what we expected it was going to do. Yeah. And Teamer Battlecry. It's one of those cards that even now, when you see it on ladder, it still does big things, and it's still you still want to kill it when your opponent plays it. So
yeah, you do. Yeah.
And I think when I bought it, I found a deal on them where I got copies for either $1.25 and $1.50. So it's down to 50, 60 cents.
I'd say it's probably about 60 something cents right now.
That's fine. And that's about the drop you expect on some dollar cards or whatever anyway after set release. I think the toughest thing for this, though, really is the prominence of Nowhere to Run. I think is a big issue for this card. And just kind of the nature of the way the format went as a whole. Now, that being said, I think the card is still playable. Obviously, the more cards you get in Standard that have impact abilities or whatever, right, it gets better. But I think it's just a victim of the format right now. I think it's still playable and it's still good. And we didn't expect it to be a format mainstay, which was good. But yeah, I think it's just the ceiling is what it is, right?
Yeah.
It's not a terrible card, but it's not going to be a superstar card, no matter how we look at this one. I think it's just playable and fine. I would only go out at this point and rush to spin wild cards on it if I had a definitive deck I really wanted to play. Otherwise, just play with the ones you already open.
This is maybe the third card that we've covered in this video so far that could really benefit from, say, a Monstrous Rage or Corey Steelcutter ban.
Oh, sure. Sure.
And I'm not saying do ban those cards, but just keep your eyes peeled, because if there ever is a ban on either of those pieces, or once we hit rotation, obviously, whichever happens first, then these mid-rangey pieces could be a lot better, right? When there's no longer a turn 3 or turn 4 kill deck in Standard that's that reliable as Cutter is. Then suddenly I think that mid-rangey stuff like Battlecry might be really good, even though there is a prevalence of, Abrades and Lightning Bolts and Nowhere to Runs and Virtue of Persistence. Exactly. You can deal with that. And this is just one of those cards. If it sits on the table for a turn, it threatens to be very good. There's still the Outcaster Trailblazer sort of combo thing that it does. And Teamer is still a deck with a lot of options.
Actually, let me say this for the card, is that it's not even really Monstrous Rage that's the problem for this card, believe it or not. It's actually Manifold Mouse. And the reason being is that one of its best qualities is being a 4-power blocker.
Yeah.
But with the 3 toughness, it doesn't matter if they're just double striking, right? That's the bigger issue. So it's kind of a tough situation. Now, I will say I've seen more success with this lately in the world of the Is It aggro decks, because they're not playing Manifold Mouse in a lot of those. And now you become a reasonable blocker against a lot of things. And they don't have quite as much removal either a lot of the times, because they're playing
some of those decks have dropped
and some of the other stuff.
Exactly. They've dropped Lightning Strike, and they're just playing either Torch the Tower or Burst Lightning. So 3 toughness can be kind of a benchmark against some of those decks. I'll give you that.
But it's more because of the space in the deck, though, because they have to make room for Corey Steelcutters. They're making room for the talent to make the otters. And that leaves less hard removal a lot of the time. So it still has room, but you're not great against the mono red decks. It was the big issue early in the season.
And you still, there's times where you don't feel comfortable blocking with it against mono red, but
yeah,
you probably do it. You know what I mean? Or blue red decks. But either way, just like Fang Keeper's Familiar, I feel like this is another one that has some more. They all have time to become better Magic cards, but I feel like this one has more of a chance of doing that.
These were the underrated cards that we were like, hey, here's something to talk about. Some cards you probably overlooked. I think this is still, like you're saying, still playable, totally fine. No real issues with that one. Now, your next one, I think you really hit on.
I'll take a hit on this one.
I think you really hit on that, and that's Rediscover the Way.
Yeah. I had a lot of people telling me, because it wasn't just this video that I was kind of vocal about this card during previous season. I had a lot of people telling me that this would never see play, basically. Meanwhile, the thing that I had people argue the most with me over is that I would call this, in effect, similar to Stock Up. This is like a Stock Up. And when you add it all up, it kind of is. It looks at 6 cards and it gives you puts 2 in your hand, but it's an enchantment. So unlike a Stock Up, this could theoretically be bounced or blinked or whatever, right? This has seen a lot of play in those, but Jeskai Dragons decks. Like a lot of play in those decks, and it kind of took over for Dragonologist. So Dragonologist, I took a neutral hit on in the beginning of the season, but Rediscover has really kind of stayed around in those decks the whole time. So, we just saw Jeskai Dragons win, I think it was an SCG regional championship qualifier like 2 weeks ago. So, these decks are still relatively popular. You see them pop up on MTGO League results too. So, yeah, Rediscover, I think, is one of the first cards, at least on my list, that I think counts as a hit.
Yeah, I think it totally was.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a key part of the Jeskai control decks for sure.
Yeah.
It shows up in some fringe decks. Like, the value you get from it is still good. Possibly gets even better after Final Fantasy. Depends on what the decks look like, because there's several things that care about enchantments or returning enchantments from the graveyard.
That's true,
that sort of thing. So there's still some room to grow with this card. Because, I mean, you're talking about the fact this card's going to be standard legal into 2028.
Yeah, something like that. It's 3 years. It's 3 years.
It's going to be around for a while. Because remember, we have the fall rotation this time, but then after this one, rotation isn't until January 1.
Right.
After that, starting in 2027. So you're going to get a long time with this card. You're talking about another at least 8 to 10 sets that are going to be out since then. Mm-hmm. So up to that point, so there's a lot of opportunities still. So while we've seen some good stuff with it, we still may not have seen the ceiling on that card.
And keep in mind, we're in like a pretty full standard right now, all things considered. This is like the biggest standard of all time. And once we hit a rotation, we'll have fewer options, and Rediscover the Way might be an even better one in a smaller pool.
Yeah.
So we'll see, man. I think Rediscover counts. But
yeah, it totally counts. That's probably the highest hit, really, of all the stuff that we talked about.
Just about. I think there are a couple of, you could argue that they're hits, especially one on your end for sure, but we'll get there. What's your next pick? Or what
My
was
next one was Sarkhan Dragon Ascendant. And this literally did exactly what I thought it would. I mean, like, I like the card. I think it's exciting, but realistically, you only play it when you're playing a dragon deck.
Yep,
right?
That's
if you're playing the dragon deck, it was a key part of it. It lets you cast 4 mana things on turn 3. It can grow if it's not dealt with. Like, it's still a must-kill card for your opponent a lot of the time, so it doesn't get out of control.
No.
So, nothing surprising. If anything, the downside was, I think when we did the video, they were like $3 to $5, and now they're like $1. So it's just that sucks.
I'd still maybe pick this up for a Commander Dragons deck.
Oh, yeah,
At $1, I think that's probably a decent, you're looking for good 2-drops. That's not bad.
Yeah, if I was playing Dragons in other formats, I would still pick it up and play it. Like, it's a good, cheap value add. And one of those ones that, like, again, it gets better as there's more dragons, and I think that's going to be the case for a lot of cards that are themed. But yeah, like I said, the card was fine. You didn't have to invest a lot into it. I don't expect it was going to be anything crazy. And it's kind of like, while I really like the card, I really like it for one specific instance, and it's kind of what we expected it to be.
Yeah, I mean, the Frank Karsten built a deck right before the season started that was basically, is it Dragons with the 3-mana Sarkhan from Big Score or March of the Machine? I think a lot of people thought the Dragons deck was going to go that way, and so Sarkhan made a lot of sense. But In this case, the Dragons deck looked a lot more control-y, and Sarkhan just didn't really work out in that build. So
yeah, and I will say, Teamer Dragons and the Is It Dragons are still viable. Like I've played both of them recently on the ladder, and if you want to play them, it's a good card. But it's one of those ones that it only goes in one type of deck, effectively.
Right, and that is it, Chip. Yeah, exactly.
It's great for those decks, but you're only putting in one type of deck. But all right, your next one I thought was a pretty cool pick too. But Warden of the Grove.
Warden of the Grove. Now, I have rewatched some of these videos, and I will say that I specifically said this was probably not a great pick for Standard, but for Commander, this would be a decent card that people are overlooking in their +1/+1 counter decks. Now, it's not often that we highlight specifically Commander on this series, but I was not that excited for Standard. That said, this card is still holding a value of about $1.75 or something in Commander. Not the most expensive thing in the world, but also not a 50-cent rare. So I'm not going to take a hit on this one or anything, but I will say for the purposes that I outlined for it, I think people are playing it in Commander. So it's not a breakout card or anything, but it is one that people seem to be on a little bit, but not in Standard. But I didn't think it would be a Standard card.
But it is seeing some play in Standard, actually. We've seen
it pop up on the arena.
Yeah, we've seen some Naya tokens decks with it. The thing is, we haven't really seen true +1/+1 counters decks with it. And I think that was people's confusion trying to use it early. Now you're seeing it in like some mid-rangey decks and some token decks or whatever, just for the value of, okay, I can make another body. Okay, now I have a big blocker. And in those cases, it's doing what it's trying to do fine. Just awkwardly, so far, it hasn't actually been in the +1/+1 counters deck.
Somehow.
Which is kind of weird, and when you think about it. But even when I've played it, it's like, oh, well, the counters are a nice bonus, but I'm mostly using it because I can pump up other creatures or just make more bodies and keep doing the token thing. So yeah, a little bit of a weird situation there. But yeah, I think this is fine. I think that's still a hit. It still kind of met the goals of what you wanted it to hit. And again, it's not a card people had to invest heavily in to get the value out of.
Yeah, like you said with Fang Keeper's Familiar, I'll take like one notch above neutral with this for the purposes I outlined.
You could give it even a little more than that because I feel like I've seen Warden of the Grove more than I've seen Fang Keeper's Familiar, honestly.
Oh, weirdly, that's kind of true. But yeah.
It's weird, but that's not what you would have expected, going into the set.
Necessarily, right.
But that's just the way the format goes sometimes. So it kind of makes sense.
What did you have next? I know what it is.
It's Dragonback Assault. And you know what's funny? I'm realizing spoiler alert, you should probably check out our overrated video and our review of that because I think we actually did even better on that, way better on that one than we did on this one. But
I count this as a hit, at least like in terms of what people are playing on the arena. I play this card every day. Like
I think that's part of the issue too, right? When you look at some of these and people say, oh, well, they were never top tier A or S tier tournament decks, or they weren't like tier 1, tier 2, whatever. But you still run into them a lot on the ladder, which means they work and people are playing them. Even at, platinum and mythic levels, you run into these cards pretty regularly.
There's a kind of a Teamer landfall control deck right now with this is the very top end, like the game winner, and it's good. That deck's pretty good.
I have both won and lost to this being doppelganged.
Yeah, it's a great doppelgang target.
Like you doppelgang it, you wipe out the board, and then after that, literally every land, or you target a land as one of your things, so you can have them stacked to where the damage goes off, and then you're like, I have 12 dragons.
Yep.
Like, what are you gonna do?
I think I win. Do I win? It's like, I tried a little build with Dragonback Assault and Frostcliff Siege together because Siege can give stuff, haste, and that works out. It's funny how much you can do with this. Like I played this with Urini as my top end, the like 8 mana Teamer Dragon or whatever, and it just seems like it works in a lot of different builds. So I would actually give you a hit on this. It hasn't hit a top table yet, but this is another one that like Corey Steel ban, Monstrous Rage ban, anything that gets aggro kneecapped a little bit, or even just a rotation could make this card like a lot more playable. This is one of the better like mid-range top end finishers in Magic right now in Standard, and I think that it's just waiting for its time. So I think it's good.
It's also a fun one to build around. I think of all the stuff that we probably talked about of the 10 cards in that video, this was probably the most interesting to build around because you can do ramp stuff. Like I said, you can do doppelgang things.
Yep.
You can build it to be a dragon deck. You can build it to be a control deck that happens to use the lands to make dragons at the end. I played a version that even played this with other landfall stuff.
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah
I'm making
easy.
like 4/4 Balos and doing like all this other stuff alongside it. So yeah, it was a fun card all the way around, just really interesting. I don't even know what the value was, but I remember being very low for being the type of card that it was.
For as hype as it was, because I feel like people were hyped a little bit on the card, but it was still like reasonable to purchase.
I feel by the time we talked about it, looking at the time, it was like $4 or something like that, $4 to $5, and it's down to like $2.50 to $3. It looks like.
Yeah, it's held about $2.50 for a while.
Yeah,
I keep looking at this card to purchase for Commander.
Oh sure.
And I'm waiting for it to cross that like $2 mark, like go under it, but it still hasn't. It held at about $3 to $4 for a long time, and now it's at about $2.50, something like that. And that again denotes some both Commander play and some interest in the card.
Yeah,
like people are purchasing it still.
I could see the price being stable around $2.50 because it still has value to landfall decks.
Yeah.
And they'll probably want it just because it's infinite creatures that you don't have to work for, really.
Yeah, it's a better Rampaging Balos in a lot of way, and it's a sweeper too, and it just a sweeper that doesn't take out your Rampaging Balos tokens or its own tokens if you happen to copy it or get a second copy somehow. So again, I think that this is one of those where like in 5 years, 3 to 5 years, this is actually going to be worth more than $2. Like pretty easily. So
all right. Now our last one, this is one that we both agreed was going to be played and that it was still underrated at the time.
Yeah.
But Scavenger Region.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll take like a neutral hit on this. I play against this a good bit. There's a Sultai Dragons deck that I don't know if it's like the same guy over and over, but like I play against this deck like maybe 5 times a week on the arena. And I have seen this exact deck in the League 5-0 results. I haven't really seen it at a challenge that I can remember, an MTGO challenge, and I haven't really seen it at a big paper tournament like a regional championship qualifier or anything, but I pretty consistently see Scavenger Region in MTGO 5-0 list. So it hasn't necessarily broken through or anything to the A tier or the S tier, but it is a card that shows up,
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, right? Because it was one of those ones where we knew it was playable and we knew it was even good.
Yeah, we both said that,
It was like we thought it might be able to outpace the hype. But I think as it turns out, it was probably exactly what the hype was. Right? You know what I mean? Like it was right in that square of just like, all right, it'll be around a while, it'll be a reasonable sweeper. Sometimes it's a dragon in the dragon decks or whatever. Like it's been quality.
It's like the entire community can kind of take a hit with this one because I don't know, it was kind of undervalued a bit at the time, but the more people open the set, the more people look at the set when it actually came out and people are checking it out on Arena and stuff. I think people started to realize how good the card was, but it still hasn't really transcended or anything, even though I think this is a decent time for it. We're in a format where a 3 or 4 mana sweeper like this could be pretty all right.
Oh yeah.
There's not a lot of, right. So maybe it's worth a shot, but it hasn't really ascended to A or S tier, but it's been around. I'll take a neutral on this. But again, maybe a real hit. I don't know.
I'll say this for the card too, though. It wasn't even really expensive back when we talked about it. Surprisingly, It was just a couple of dollars, and now they're like $1. So like, all right. I mean, even if I was building a deck for standard and I wanted to play it, like, cool, go get a set for like $350. Basically,
exactly. Yeah,
that's
not a bad
that's
deal.
Fine. Yeah, and I mean, you're basically at the floor of what the card's ever going to be. So if you're going to pick them up and play it, awesome. And if black or mono black variants do make a big turnaround or become even more playable in standard post rotation, wouldn't be surprised if this is one of the key pieces for it.
It's like you said, it doesn't look like these next few sets there's going to be a whole lot of important dragons, which is kind of a double-edged sword with this. If there were important dragons, you could play it alongside this guy. But what that actually means is that every important creature in the next few sets is probably going to be a not dragon. so this can kill it,
Yeah.
Just anytime you see like a 1 toughness or a 2 toughness creature, you got to think about, well, is Scavenger Region the better sweeper for this than, X or Y card? So I don't know. Altogether, I think I'll take like a two notches over neutral for Scavenger
I think
Region.
this goes into the hit percentage, honestly.
Fair enough.
The only thing I would say is like it would just match the hype, right?
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily a hard card to call.
Yeah, we thought it could be even better, and it kind of was just like exactly what we all thought it was.
Yeah, right. They are who we thought they were.
Yeah, exactly. I would say of all the things on the list, we really only had one card, the Veteran Ice Climber, that just didn't get played at all.
Yeah, just fell flat, right? 100%. Yeah.
We have at least 3 or 4 that are still going to be playable into the future, right? And have potential that's kind of unseen. We had a couple that, say 3 or 4 that actually already are seeing a lot of play.
Solid, like base hits. You know what I mean?
So yeah, no real complaints there, honestly. I mean, because again, as we're reviewing it, it's just, did they do the things we thought they were going to do? Right? Even no matter how excited or unexcited we were, did they do what we thought? The answer is yes on a lot of these.
For most of them, yeah, I think we called it pretty accurately.
If anything, my biggest hit or miss, I would say, is probably the Battlecry, in the sense of the format really, at least in the early stages, was leaning so heavily on those mono red decks and the manifold mouse that it just made that card struggle to be good. Later in the season, when I've played it, we've had much better success, but that's because a lot of decks have went away from like the heavy first strikers and the manifold mouse.
Right.
So
excuse me.
Just kind of one of those weird things, you know, how things work out.
Yeah, honestly, when your quote unquote worst hit is Teamer Battlecry, you did pretty good.
Yeah, that's probably true.
We'll see if we did any better on the overrated list, though. We'll see about that.
I'm pretty sure we did, but why don't you tell them where they can find you so they can go watch it?
All right. Well, if you enjoyed this, then you might enjoy us talking about cards that we thought were overrated when this set came out. And we're going to be doing that over on my channel, Strictly Better MTG, or if you want to make it easier on yourself, just SBMTG. 5 letters in the YouTube search bar, and that will take you straight to my channel. And you can check that video out along with all the, we do the overrated cards for Final Fantasy on my channel as well. Mostly we do overrated stuff on mine, underrated over here on PowrDragn. So again, if you're interested in us being kind of spiky and a little bit more critical of cards, then, come check out my channel for the overrated.
Yeah, we're always positive. You get to see us be a little bit negative, so why not?
Yeah, why not? It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, also as a reminder, if you are new again here for Magic, awesome. Thank you for watching the video and getting all the way through. If you're planning to go to pre-releases this week, and I do have a couple of videos on the channel. One is how to build a sealed deck in 6 minutes. The other is things you should prepare for going to your first pre-release. So check those out on the channel and be ready to go, because it's new. There's a lot going on, and I have them all simplified to just a few minutes. You should go enjoy that. Otherwise, yeah, hit subscribe. You should have done it. You got this far. You liked the video. And then hit the like button so YouTube knows to give you more of these, and just give us a comment. How crazy you are. Were there other cards that should have been on our list? Was there stuff that surprised you during the season? Either way, we want to know. But that's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.